And I, Elizabeth Wathuti, from the host country of Kenya, the land of beautiful landscapes and the greatest marathoners, as representatives of the African Youth Climate Assembly, to underscore the urgency of addressing climate change and its profound impact on Africa's youth. Our declaration, the African Youth Climate Declaration, reflects our commitment to harness the power of our youth to drive meaningful change. The African Youth Climate Assembly's vision is rooted in inclusivity, resilience, innovation, and the conviction that young people are one of the biggest resources that Africa is endowed with. We seek to elevate youth participation and inclusion in climate governance, forging pathways towards sustainable development and green growth. And we urge you, our esteemed leaders, to join hands with us in this endeavor.
We, the African indigenous peoples from 20 countries, gathered in the pre-summit held in Nairobi in the past 2 days in preparation for this summit today, appreciate the Africa Climate Summit Secretariat and the government of Kenya, as led by our able President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, for the continued recognition of indigenous peoples and traditional knowledge as a contribution to African climate change discourses. The role that African indigenous peoples play in protecting critical ecosystems across the continent makes them major actors in combating climate change. Furthermore, given that our livelihoods are based on direct use of natural resources, indigenous peoples are unfortunately the most hit hardest by climate crisis, notwithstanding the fact that we have the lowest carbon footprint, or rather the lowest emitters. As the African Climate Summit commences today, our main concerns and requests are as follows. 1, on clean and renewable energy and energy transition. As we are all aware, all renewable energy initiatives are all around indigenous peoples' territories. For us, there is no idle land. For us, the so-called idle land is our fathers' grazing land. This is our area of our cultural, where we undertake our cultural rights. And so to us, any investment around renewable energy must take into consideration free, prior, and informed consent.
For many years, the climate change negotiations under the UNFCCC have remained a contestation between North and South, with deepening mistrust and widening divide between North and South about two actions that should reverse the impacts of the challenge that poses existential threat to the survival of humanity and the planet, that is adaptation and mitigation. The outcome of this summit, then, should seek to not only provide a neutral ground for conversation and restore hope and dignity for millions of people whose livelihoods have been turned upside down due to the ranging climate impacts manifested by shifting seasons, drying rivers, erratic rainfall, diseases, compounding food crisis, and forced solutions, but should also be responsive to African people's realities, aspirations, desires, and imperatives of climate justice. Top of these should be adaptation, underpinned by the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. It is not just about coping with the impacts of climate change, but also about enhancing our solidarity in prosperity, resilience, reducing our risk, and seizing the opportunities which are coming with this challenge. Yes, Africa, with the most progressive position in international dialogue on climate change, has pronounced itself on what we require in adaptation and mitigation. And all standards show that we are doing more than our fair share in the global efforts to combat this crisis. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa needs between 160 to 340 billion US dollars by 2030 for adaptation, while the current flows are only around 16 billion annually, a fraction of a budget for a blue chip company and foundations attending this summit. We need a deep conversation on how to address this, including achieving the balanced financing between adaptation and mitigation, as delaying action now will result in exponential costs in the future. This summit should also convey a bold, unequivocal message from Africa that it is not a forum to end the industrialized countries, to escape their historical responsibilities, and transfer their burden of action to the victims of their actions, but a platform to once again renew our call to honor their commitments on deep and genuine emission reduction, adequate support to vulnerable, and support the communities at the front line of climate crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, we want to extend a hand of partnership and take front seat in the inevitable transition to low carbon, climate resilient, fair, equitable, and ecologically just development pathways. We should also seek to change the narratives, and I think I have heard His Excellency President speaking about that every time. And we need also reciprocal actions from our partners in the North, and urge them not to shift the goalpost like they have done before. I hope, Your Excellency, you will agree with me that we are doing so much, but there is a problem.
I want to thank the Kenyan government and personally President Ruto for his leadership and vision in bringing us here together. And I want special recognition for Minister Soipan Tuya for her work and efforts in helping to organize both the summit and the climate weeks. This summit for Africa, by Africa, will help us tackle the climate crisis we see and feel all around the world. I speak to you today not just as the head of the UNFCCC, but as the former minister from a developing country. So let us talk about what we can do to stabilize the climate and build resilient societies in Africa and throughout the world. Development is, as it should be, a priority. I know personally the destruction that climate-related disasters can wreak on years of development. But the world is asking for a lot. Develop, but don't do it in the carbon-intensive way that we did in the past. Therefore, it is a global responsibility to collectively work out how we do that. Every day this week, we'll be putting our heads together to discuss how to build resilience to climate risks, transition to a low-emission economy, and collaborate on solutions, transforming our economies through a just transition that benefits all sectors of society. Africa, the equal partner in this endeavor, is offering its huge potential. We already know innovation in Africa is astounding. So how can we accelerate this development through green technology and energy, and in doing so, taking the necessary actions to keep in 1.5 within reach? First, we must address finance. Climate action, just like everything else in life, costs money. Finance should be viewed in the context of mitigation and adaptation, in addition to all of the other things. COP28 will be a critical moment to hold the line on temperature rise at 1.5 degrees Celsius. The world needs to reduce emissions by 43% from 2019 levels by 2030 to achieve this. And the IPCC reports the impacts will be far greater at anything above this, especially in certain parts of the world. So for starters, to hold this off, we immediately need to see the delivery of the pledged $100 billion, a doubling of adaptation finance, the substantial replenishment of the Green Climate Fund, a global finance system, both public and finance, that is aligned with action and green finance.
I therefore call upon all of us here to use the next 3 days to explore options as to how we can optimize Africa's abundant human and natural resources to leapfrog towards a low-carbon economy while opening new opportunities for climate finance, trade, investment, innovation, resilience, and green jobs. Excellencies, honorable colleagues, the climate change debate has entered a new era. It is no longer just about tackling an environmental or development problem, but about addressing climate change in the context of justice. We must look at African countries and their high debt distress, contextualizing it with our ability to adapt and mitigate climate change. We must look at the impact of climate change to our economies, which are heavily dependent on climate-sensitive sectors, such as agriculture, tourism, fisheries, energy, and forestry, among others. We must also be cognizant of the climate change nexus with migration and the need to climate-proof our infrastructure. That is why we are persuaded that if we do not develop adequate response measures to deal with the climate change crisis, it will crush us all together. Let us therefore step up and lead the world to find solutions for climate change by listening to all voices at this climate summit, including from youth, indigenous communities, and civil society from Africa and beyond. As I conclude, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to convey goodwill and urge you all to take time during your visit and sample our rich wildlife and cultural heritage. Her Excellency, Ambassador Sako, and myself wish at this early stage to extend an invitation, since this is a ministerial, we are beginning today, to invite you all later on to dinner this evening and more deliberations so that we can firm up the outcomes that we want to see coming out of this summit.
On behalf of the African Union Commission, I am pleased to welcome you all to the African Climate Summit and to thank all delegates from Africa and the world at large for setting time aside of your busy schedule to participate at this inaugural African Climate Summit. You are welcome. Karibu. Sejam bem-vindos. Vous êtes le bienvenu. Merci. Your participation is a clear demonstration of our unwavering commitment to collectively shape the future of climate change, climate action in Africa and across the world. We are not isolated. We are following the global agenda, although we are not the polluters. Our responsibility is just 4%, but we cannot isolate because the climate issue, it's really affecting all of us globally, the planet, and we need a sound planet for the next generation. That's why in the continent we are fully committed in this agenda, and I really commend President Ruto for his commitment on this climate agenda. Congratulations, Excellency President. Let me also like to acknowledge the presence of former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, His Excellency Prime Minister of Ethiopia. You're welcome to this meeting. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to express our sincere gratitude to the government and people of Kenya for the warm reception and hospitality accorded to all the delegation since their arrival in this beautiful city of Nairobi. I would also like to commend the organizers from the different ministries and partners organizations under the leadership and strategic guidance of His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, that worked around the clock on the technical and logistical arrangement required for a successful summit. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to submit to you that climate change is a pandemic in Africa and is responsible for more lives and economic distress. Climate change is resulting in an increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events that causes disasters with compounding effects because they do not allow us to recover before another disaster strikes again. What are we witnessing is the situation thereby governments are abandoning development and concentrating their resources in responding to climate-related disaster without building resilience. We know that many African governments, they are using at least 2% of their budget to invest on the disasters, on adaptation programs in the continent.
An opportunity-oriented focus on climate action is the engine for propelling Africa into a realm of stability and prosperity, elevating us to middle-income status and beyond. This context is precisely what sets this climate summit apart from others. It aims to unite us across neighborhoods, across sectors, across institutions, local or international, across country borders, across continents, and across generations. It is because we all have a shared stake in the Earth's ability to sustain life that we must envision together a future that embraces the values of equality, human security, and shared prosperity. Africa possesses all the necessary conditions to realize this future. Our foremost asset is our young and growing young people and workforce, educated, skilled, and motivated to pursue industry, innovation, and enterprise. And we saw them here speak ably this morning. And I congratulate the young people who've been here for the last 3 days, and they have done a tremendous job in the Youth Summit. We have ample renewable energy potential as well, and the natural assets and resources to green our own consumption, but also to meaningfully contribute to decarbonization of the global economy. We must see in green growth not just a climate imperative, but also a fountain of multi-billion-dollar economic opportunities that Africa and the world is primed to capitalize. we will not shy away from the difficult conversations and uncomfortable realities that must be addressed to achieve meaningful change. Policy, regulations, taxation, trade, and climate justice will all be scrutinized in national, regional, global contexts. Yet, the way we frame these discussions matters. I invite all of us to adopt opportunity lens as we navigate these complex dialogues. For a very long time, we have looked at this as a problem. It is time we flipped and looked at it from the other side. There are opportunities, immense opportunities as well. And that is why we are not here to catalogue grievances and list problems. We are here to scrutinize ideas, assess perspectives, so that we can unlock solutions. The very format of this summit has been designed to facilitate such engagement. Over the next 3 days, be ready to be challenged in this dynamic ecosystem of dialogue and discovery. African and global leaders, innovation trailblazers, experts, investors, and captains of industry are here to explore the opportunities, tackle the barriers, and scale up solutions. The climate conversation began 31 years ago in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro. But this is the first African summit 31 years later. When my colleagues agreed, in the Africa Union that is, agreed to my offer to host this climate summit, it was clear to me that this inaugural summit is going to be the stepping stone to the ultimate resolution of this challenge. The reason why possibly we haven't made much progress is because Africa had not consolidated and assembled its ideas and brought them to the table. I am confident that now going forward, we have all what it takes to create a win-win outcome out of this very intense conversation about climate change. This occasion summons us to contemplate the full range of possibilities that can be unleashed by directing investment and appropriate technology to actualize our continent's abundant resource endowments. Since 1961, Africa has witnessed a 1/3 reduction in agricultural productivity due to climate change, a stark reminder of the urgent need for adaptation. Yet, much of the world is just waking up to the merits of restorative agriculture, a practice that already resonates with African farming practices. By building on the wealth of indigenous knowledge, we can scale, enhance, and even monetize our agricultural systems. This enables us to unlock the huge potential in our agricultural land assets, representing 2/3 of the world's uncultivated, underutilized arable land, to feed our growing populations and to do so in harmony with our invaluable natural carbon sinks. Additionally, the restoration and expansion of Africa's natural carbon sinks are not just an environmental imperative. In fact, they are an unparalleled economic gold mine. They have the potential to absorb millions of tons of CO2 annually, which should translate into billions of dollars if we were living in a fair world, improve livelihoods, and millions of opportunities across this continent. Our renewable energy resources are not just environmental necessity. They are the ultimate catalyst of radical socio-economic prosperity. They can fuel sustainable development, drive economic growth, create jobs, and also uplift millions from energy poverty, all while reducing our carbon footprint continentally and globally. The possibilities are not just promising, they are transformative. Africa can power all our energy needs with renewable resources. The continent has enough potential to be entirely self-sufficient with the mixture of wind, solar, geothermal, sustainable biomass, and hydropower. In Africa, we can be a green industrial hub that helps other regions achieve their net zero strategies by 2050. In other words, what I'm saying is unlocking the renewable resources that we have in our continent is not only good for Africa, it is good for the rest of the world. Because we not only are driving our own growth, but we are ready to share these resources with the rest of the world, and by doing so, we will assist the rest of the world in ensuring that we move towards the net zero target that we all set for ourselves. And GDP is about assets, it's about what you have. We have the carbon sinks that serves the world, cleans our environment, acts as sequestration of carbon that is produced by others. But we get nothing for it. It's not anywhere in our balance sheet. Everybody's assets are in their balance sheet. Some of ours are not in that balance sheet. The day we put our whole assets in our balance sheet, you will know that we are a very wealthy continent. And let me say, we do all that, but it doesn't count for much. But we do it anyway, because we love this world, because it's our home. And that is why the conversation of North versus South must come to an end. Who did what? It's not a conversation that we have the luxury to engage in. Because when the apocalypse happens, it will happen for all of us, for the entire humanity. Let me say this. We do this, and all of this comes while safeguarding our biodiversity. We are careful to make sure that that is in place. And for Africa, renewable resources, it is not just the volume, but also the non-seasonality of our renewable energy that stands out. The nearly year-round sunshine makes Africa's solar potential particularly unique, perfectly suited to industrial energy demands, something that is challenging in other areas, especially in temperate climates. Kenya, for example, serves as a good example of what is possible. Our national grid currently operates a 3 gigawatts with 93% of that power being renewable. Our ambition is audacious yet achievable. 100% renewable by 2030 and a 100 gigawatt grid entirely renewable by 2040. A serious challenge in bridging the investment gap in order to enable the continent meet its energy needs is the creation of demand on sufficient scale to provide incentives for appropriate private investment in energy infrastructure development. Industrial energy at scale is therefore necessary to anchor energy demand as a means of tackling the widespread energy poverty still prevalent across our continent. The numbers are stark. Nearly 600 million Africans lack access to electricity. Another 150 million grapple with unreliable power. And almost 1 billion have no access to clean cooking energy. But the abundance of our renewable resources, the possibilities offered by new technologies, and opportunities created by new climate financing offers enormous possibilities for us. Our strategic proximity to substantial reserves of metal and minerals necessary for the global energy transition makes Africa an attractive candidate to become a global hub in green industrial supply chain, from refining metals and minerals to constructing and assembling electric motor vehicles, batteries, and other components. By 2025, the mining of battery critical minerals, nickel, lithium, cobalt, is estimated to generate some $11 billion in value. If we take the next step and engage in value-added activities like refining these minerals into industrial-grade metals, that value could quadruple to $50 billion. And if we consider the end-to-end value chain for electric vehicles, including the battery pack and all other components, the market value skyrockets to an astonishing $7 trillion. That is a trajectory. What today we are selling for $11 billion could be $7 trillion if we engage in the right trajectory. And that is what we are saying. And that is what Madam Josefa was saying. What these figures clearly demonstrate is that Africa can no longer afford a minimalist, short-termist, raw material-based approach. The time has come for us to break out of the shackles of low ambition. We must now begin to aim higher and strive for more and better outcomes. As we work towards capturing more economic value from these opportunities, we are not just building a resilient and prosperous continent. We are also contributing to a more balanced and stable global economy. It is the only way, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to stop the migration using rickety boats from one continent to another. It is the way that we are going to stop the negativities. We need to balance our development, and we have the assets to do it, and we have the ambition to do it, and we want to do it together. Trillions of dollars globally are looking for green investment opportunities as the pressure to tackle climate change and crisis heightens. Africa holds the key to accelerating decarbonization of the global economy. It is a statement of fact. Africa holds the key to decarbonizing the global economy, whether it is industrialization, whether it's manufacturing. We are not just a continent rich in resources. We are a powerhouse of untapped potential, eager to engage and fairly compete in the global marketplace. Consider this. Every year, Africa needs to generate approximately 30 million jobs, new jobs for that matter, to accommodate its rapidly expanding workforce. These are not just numbers. They are not just statistics. These are 30 million opportunities to build our future, 30 million dreams that can be fulfilled through climate-proof avenues of growth, and 30 million steps towards shared prosperity. The examples I have shared with you are not mere statistics. They are pragmatic routes for Africa to not only participate in the global economy, but to excel and to grow. It is not a secret that we are paying at least 5 times as much as advanced economies to borrow from the financial markets. It's a fact, documented. Like many of us, a few years ago, I would have believed the challenges were too great and the barriers too high. Today, I see them differently, as mere tests of our collective will and ingenuity. We should develop effective policies and regulations that catalyze investment and entrepreneurship and unleash the creativity of local business. We must transform Africa's resource wealth from mere potential into real opportunities by directing large-scale investments that will actualize the possibilities that exist and await our citizens in present and in future generations. Let's make no mistake, however, we have no choice but to approach this colossal task with clear minds and open eyes. A lot needs to happen before Africa can live up to its full potential of providing climate solutions for its citizens and to the entire world. Over the next few days, I have no doubt that African leaders seated here and our friends from elsewhere will be open, honest, and direct about what we can commit and bring to the table and the type of the collaborations we need from our global partners. My call to everyone present in this historic summit is for us to work together and converge our efforts on African priorities. I urge everyone to make a contribution to our generation's unprecedented and highly consequential endeavor to catalyze climate action in a spirit of candor, collaboration, and courage. Let us imagine a pathway for different financial structures that can deliver on Africa's goals. Let us commit to invest in viable solutions presented by renewable energy, green industrialization, climate-smart agriculture, and nature conservation. I am confident that we are all inspired by the possibilities before us and galvanized by the demands of this critical time to engage productively, collaborate successfully, and conclude the Africa Summit with a Nairobi Declaration on green growth and climate finance agenda that will commit us to pursue a climate-positive path to propel Africa's economy and promote job creation in a manner that limits our emissions and aids global decarbonization efforts. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends, this summit is a moment to imagine a bold and radically affirmative African future. We are here to envision a continent that links markets, and connects resources with demand, unlocking massive economies of scale, a continent that offers an economic backbone for a decarbonized world, a continent that thrives and shapes climate-proof future for all. So, as we immerse ourselves into the array of complex issues during the summit, let us fix our gaze firmly upon the horizon of possibilities. The future is not just something to hope for. Neither is it something to merely wish or wait for. The future is for us to conceptualize and actualize, starting now. That is what we have come to do at the Africa Climate Summit. Welcome to the future, and I thank you.